Yo, SUC in the building, Source Gang. We back in full effect. We back. You know how we rocking, man. How we rocking. Yo, academia, math, physics, reading proficiency. We all about that here at the Source. You know, we bring that Yahshua, the Source terrorists in the building. Scholastic bully in the building. Feels good to talk to you guys again. You know what I'm saying? Get ready to disseminate some information with you brothers and sisters, man. But before we get into today's topic, which is going to be the history of Egypt and the Levant, a very pivotal topic, a topic that many Israelites and many people on the cusp of religion are under the tutelage or under the auspice of some religious organization or that deals with the Near East, Middle East. I feel as if this should be one of the top priorities in your learning and your education is learning about these two localities, because so much of the major religions take place in this area of the world we know as the Middle East, ancient Near East, Egypt, Levant, or what have you. So I feel like this is going to be something that's monumental to the community, and something that will open your eyes. You understand? To the dark past, because we all don't know about the past. What we know about the past is mainly inferential. It's something we infer on some clues and some evidence that we can dig up. So we make our logical deductions, and abductive reasoning is applied, Oxford Razors is applied, and come with the best conclusion that we can. Me having the Israelite background, shalom, Joshua. Me having the Israelite background that I have, a lot of people from my ideology or my school of thought, they look at Egypt and they demonize Egypt and think that Egypt has nothing to do with us, but our Genesis. If you're of the notion that you are Israelite, our Genesis begins with Egypt. You know, we became a people in Egypt. So it's good to dive into that history. Ramses III has our paternal marker. E1B1A was found amongst Ramses III's genetic makeup. So we definitely were there, and we definitely play a role in ancient Egyptian history. So it's pivotal and critical at the same time that we learn the connection between ancient Egypt and Levant. Egypt was a hosh-posh of nations, a multiplicity of nations throughout time were living in Egypt. It wasn't all Ham, it wasn't all Shem, it wasn't none of that. It was a mixture, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. If you're a Bible believer, you come from that ideology, then you would have various groups going in and out of Egypt. It's not one or the other. Well, with that being stated, let's go ahead and open up with our brother LV. You know what I'm saying? Let's get the vibe and the mood right. You know what I'm saying? Then we're going to get into the literature. You know how we do. Pull a precept, then I kill him with the literature. Let's go with LV Europa, my brother. You know what I'm saying? Brother got a head on his shoulders too, man. Brother, real business orientated, bro. So if y'all ever get to know him, man, subscribe to his channel, LV Europa TV, on YouTube and Facebook. Let's get it. You know how we rock it, man. Let's go.
I got a visa, that's one swipe. It turned to the meter. I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure. I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper. I got a visa, that's one swipe. It turned to the meter. I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure. I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. Keep saying, hey, and you can keep that tucked away. Some gon' come with the lies. Remember them when you pray. Some gon' cry when they die. You don't worry about decay. Look, I done wake up away. My time is short, so I'ma live it today. That shit was real. I had to turn the slaves. But you gotta be brave. It's a land of the free. Gotta move like waves. Put the ring to the past. I give them path for the rage. Then I put them on the path to take them all up the stage. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper. This is the keepsake, hey. You can use this right away. Some gon' come with the truth. Honor them when you pray. Some gon' laugh about their life. They don't worry about delays. Look on them with the way that level's real. When you can use it today, don't worry about how you're gonna get paid. Lord, give it free, take it away, hey. Don't you wanna be free? Remove that rage. There's a path to the light, hey. Don't misuse those ways. We flow with the truth. Gotta move like waves. I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You know I'm a keeper, I got a visa, that's one swipe. The change of demeanor, I got that all money, baby. That bitch came with a beeper, cold as a freezer. I heat up in my leisure, I feel like a fever, baby. You should know that I'm a keeper.
All right, man. Subscribe to my brother LV Europa on YouTube to get some more great, high quality music. Well, y'all know what we here for. It's the history of Egypt and the Levant. I'm going to show you that it has always been interconnected through trade, different cultures, moving in and out of both of these various regions. You guys are going to learn that today. You know how we get down. You know how we rock it, man. Genesis 49, a 7 gang. You know what I'm saying? Israel, we back. We're never moving backwards. Here to put Israel on the Atlas. Y'all know the slow. You say no to vague interpretations and get thorough breakdowns. It ain't one doctrine I can't take down. And I had to get it. Had to do one ride for the one time. Let's get right into it, man. 7 gang, 7 candlesticks up. It ain't a debate. I've been telling y'all it's a stick up. All right, let's go, man. Y'all know how we do it. Real edification, real education. Shout out to those that are astute. Shout out to the Israelite intelligentsia. Shout out to Orthodox Moore. Shout out to my brother Elder Ra. Shout out to all the brothers that's put in their pain and putting in their work. Shout out to Anonymous Hebrew. You feel me? Shout out to my clique. Shout out to the SUC Sourced Up clique. King Self. Shout out to my brother Jeremiah. Please say to y'all, put some respect on his name. He come with flames. Shout out to my brother James, swinging and banging from Atlanta, Canaan. Shout out to my brother D Red, the blue collar scholar. You feel me? Shout out to my brother, the Don Dada, the best shot of Don Bird. And shout out to the General, tanks on the ground, Yeshua. And shout out to my sister Diamond, shining and grinding. You know what I'm saying? Dropping jewels on you fools. You know how we doing, man. You know how we rocking. 7 gang, Source gang. We in the building. Let's get it. Let's get it. All right. All right. So we gonna open up with the literature. You know how I'm doing. We go straight to the source, man. A lot of channels, a lot of you brothers, man. Y'all be freestyling too much. You know what I'm saying? It's popular on social media, you know, on YouTube or whatnot, on these different platforms to freestyle. But remember, we don't want to hear you opine or show your opinion. We want to see what you can prove. We want to see citations. We want to see source material. That's why we call it the source. This source media, source gang, 7 gang over everything over here. All right. And we're going to keep rocking like that, man. I know my family that support the channel. Y'all rocking like that. This the counterculture. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? We really put Israel on the map from a scholastic standpoint, from a scholarship standpoint. And I've been telling y'all my scholarship is like hollow tips. They explode on contact. All right, so let's get it, man. This is the Oxford Handbook of the Archaeology of the Levant, right? I read from this book before. Let me blow it up on the screen so everybody can see it. Shout out to my brother Plumantis. That's right, man. Support the family. Shabbat shalom. Like and subscribe. And please share the video on the various social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Get us out there, man, because we want this information worldwide. We want our brothers and sisters in Ghana to see this information. You understand? Our brothers and sisters that might be in Japan to see this information. You know what I'm saying? South America, wherever they are, we want them to be able to see this information. All right, so hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And I also want to say Genesis 49ers is at 9,000 subscribers. We doing big things over here. We reaching new plateaus over here. You understand? So we rocking, we move. We ain't worried about the ops. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all support. I wouldn't be here without y'all. Hit that like button, subscribe. Subscribe. Shout out to my brother Plumantis, man. That brother been showing love since we started. All right. So from there, with that being stated, without further ado, let's get right into the literature, right into the source material. You know how we doing. You know how we do it over here. All right, like as I stated, the Oxford Handbook of Archaeology of the Levant, and it deals from 8,000 BCE to 332 BCE, which is the beginning of the Greek period, Hellenization era. Alexander the Greek or whatever, with his world domination. All right. So we're going to be dealing with chapter 5, Egypt and the Levant. As I stated before, to preface this entire video, this is very, very critical, especially if you have a religious ideology that deals with the Near East, to understand about this period of time and the connection and the relationship that Egypt and the Levant had. You understand? It will open your eyes to this critical time in times past. All right, so let's get right into it. Gregory D. Moonfort wrote this chapter. Let's get to it. It says the intensity and nature of Egypto-Levantine relations have varied through time, encompassing overland and maritime commerce, diplomacy, alliances, immigration, imperialism, and deportations. That's very important right there. Deportations. That's why I tell people, just because you see the word Egypt was not a uniform people. It wasn't a uniform nation where everyone was the same. It wasn't no homogeneity. You understand? It was very heterogeneous throughout time. I mean, you had different people, different groups, different cultures intermingling and mixing, some being deported, some being brought in. You understand? So Egypt, when someone says, well, I'm Egyptian, well, that's like saying I'm American. American is a multiplicity of nations. It's not really telling you anything. It's not specific. All right, so back into the reading, it says, such cross-cultural relations incorporate varying importations and local adaptations by each host culture, including architecture, art, material, culture, language, literature, and religion. So again, the religion of Egypt is not uniform. It's a hodgepodge as well. You understand? Along with the other things as far as art, architecture, and so on and so forth. So back into the reading, it says, in times of the Egyptian strength and imperialism, such as the New Kingdom, early Site period, and quite possibly the proto-dynastic to early dynastic period, there's often a greater occurrence of Egyptian-style construction, monuments, diverse artifacts, transitory through permanent migrants, and other influence in the Levant. So this chapter is also going to be discussing the Egyptian influence of the Levant. It says during such periods, trade still forms a major mechanism for transmitting Egyptian items and inspiring local regional imitations. While Egyptian garrisons, transitory troops, emissaries, other personnel, and Egyptianized Canaanites also play a substantial role in dispersing Egyptian materials and influence. During other periods of Egyptian prosperity, such as the Old and Middle Kingdoms, Egypt relaxes its interactions with Palestine, attacking it periodically and sometimes sharing greater maritime commerce with Syria. During low points in Egyptian political stability, such as the intermediate periods, Egyptian exports and local regional copies of Egyptian forms, motifs, and concepts generally decline with commerce, often reflecting the main means of transferring Egyptian style items and influence. On the other hand, the Hyksos domination of Egypt's eastern delta introduces more Levantine influences into Egypt. The Hyksos, however, also adopt aspects of Egyptian culture and relate Egyptian and Egyptian style materials, products, and motifs abroad. For examples, the Hyksos scarabs. And one of those Hyksos scarabs, my brother Zion Lex just covered this. You have the Yaqub Har, the Yaqub Har scarab. Many people believe, and I am one of those people, by the way, that Yaqub is the biblical Jacob being mentioned on that Hyksos scarab. All right, so back into the reading. And also, before I want to add more commentary, and I can't believe I forgot to do this before I jumped in this book. Let me do this before continuing. Shout out to my brother D Red in the building. We are reading copywritten material here, and we are covered by the fair use law. You understand? We are covered here because we are using this work, this copywritten work, for teaching, scholarship, and research purposes, and that's under the Section 107 of the Copyright Act, which provides the statutory framework for determining whether something is a fair use and identifies certain types of uses, such as criticism, commentary. We will be doing that throughout the video, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. So these are some of the things that we are doing with this work. You understand? So by law, we are protected by the Section 107 of the Copyright Act. We can actually read this material here on the channel. All right, with that being stated, let's get back into the literature. I wanted to add a little bit more commentary with the Hyksos, bringing the Levantine influence into Egypt. You understand? Because again, Egypt would invade the Levant. Then you had the Hyksos period where they would bring in these influences, this material culture, architecture, so on and so forth, from the Levant into Egypt. And one of those things would be the four-room house, which became known as the Israelite house later on in archaeology. Let's keep reading. Other invaders, such as the Assyrian through Persian empires, plundered Egypt of architectural elements, e.g. Whenever you see e.g., like on the bottom left here, that means for example. So e.g. means for example, obelisks, statutory artifacts, and people. So the Assyrians were bringing in people into Egypt. This is why I say when you go through time and you're reading history, Egypt is not a uniform people. The people there in Egypt are not uniform. They're not all the same. It's a hodgepodge. It's a multiplicity of people. It says most of these things are transported through the Levant and into the Mesopotamian heartland, while Phoenicia becomes an indirect imitator and exporter of Egyptian-style products throughout the Levant and Mediterranean. So again, you see that this history is deep. It covers from the pre-dynastic all the way to the time of the Assyrians. That's how long Egypt and Levant has been connected, because again, you have the Levantine corridor that connects them. Of course, they're going to be trading. Of course, they're going to be interacting. They're neighbors. They're right next to each other. So when you have people speaking in an inflammatory manner about Egyptians, you could possibly be talking about your ancestors. And I'm speaking on the Israelite people from the Israelite paradigm. And that's why Isaiah says clearly that Egypt is my people, because it's referring to those people that were living in Egypt during certain epochs of time that came from the Shemitic stock. Let's keep going. So that was pretty much the introductory, laying the framework to what we'll be discussing in this chapter. And then he moves on to the pre-dynastic period. All right. The Chalcolithic to early Bronze Age 1. Now, the Chalcolithic is the copper era, right? Lithic meaning stone, chalco meaning copper, right? Egyptian imports first appear in Palestine during the Chalcolithic period including a Nakata 1 style calcite jar at Gaosu. North Sinai produced Gaosu Beersheba pottery and Egyptian red polished pottery and pallets, attesting to overland traffic between Palestine and Egypt. So the Chalcolithic is before the Bronze Age. So we had contact with Egypt going all the way to the pre-dynastic period. Before 3200 BCE, we had established trade. Levant had established trade with Egypt. So this is how far this history goes back in time. It says, North Sinai produced Gasul Beersheba pottery and Egyptian red polished pottery and pallets, attesting to overland traffic between Palestine and Egypt. Madi, near the apex of Egypt's delta, exhibits Levantine style subterranean dwellings. Many donkey bones, i.e. pack animals, and copper ores, ingots, and artifacts from Beersheba region and Wadi Fainan. Maritime contact with Lebanon and Afghanistan is also demonstrated by the presence of cedar pine and cypress juniper wood and lapis lazuli in pre-dynastic Egypt. So you had trade going from Egypt all the way to Afghanistan during the pre-dynastic period. So when people ask, you know what's so funny about this? If people say, well, how did the Israelites get into Africa? And how did these Shemites? Because of trade. Because these people were not all landlocked and isolated and stuck wherever they were. These people moved. These people were nomadic. These people traded. These people invaded. These people displaced people. These people moved around. You guys have an obscure sense of history. You understand? You think people just were isolated. You understand? And stuck in places for thousands and thousands of years. That is not true, especially when you own a dynasty, especially when you own an empire. You conquer, you move, you travel, you establish diplomatic relations with other countries. You don't stay stationary. You understand? Especially, I'll get into that later. But, you know, a lot of these arguments against the Israelite paradigm are asinine at this point, because we can see that there was maritime contact with Lebanon. Egypt was dealing with maritime contact with Lebanon and Afghanistan. And they know because it's demonstrated by the presence of cedar, pine, and cypress juniper wood and lapis lazuli in pre-dynastic Egypt. All right. And to illustrate this, they have the general correspondence between Egyptian dynasties and Levantine period. And we can see this, the pre-dynastic period right here goes all the way back to 4500 to 3500 BCE. And then Nakata 1 is 4000 to 3500 BC. Nakata 2, 3500 to 3200 BC. Right? Nakata 3 period is 3200 to 3000 BC. And then you get to the early dynastic period, which starts in 3000 BCE and onward. All right. And then it gives you the breakdown through all of that. Dynasty 1 is 3000 to 2890 BCE. Dynasty 2 is 2890 to 2686 BCE. And then, my bad, I went back. Dynasty 3 begins at 2686 BCE to 2613 BCE. Dynasty 4, 2613 to 2494 BCE. Dynasty 5 goes to 2494 to 2345 BCE, and Dynasty 6, 2345, 2180 to 2181 BCE. Then you have the first intermediate period, and so on and so forth. And if we have to reference this, we'll go back to this page on 94. Let's get back into the reading. And it goes all the way to Dynasty 31, which ends with the Persian occupation, then transitions to the Greek. All right, so during the EB1, Egypt's Nakata 2 and 3 cultures intensified trade with the emerging urban communities in Syria, Palestine. What's the time period of Nakata 2 and 3? We go back here, Nakata 2 and 3, 3500 BCE to 3000 BCE, right? So this is a 500-year stretch of time where these people were increasing and intensifying trade between Syria and Palestine. It says, during this period, Egyptian artifacts appear throughout North Sinai and Palestine, reaching as far as Megiddo and Transjordan, and occur further north in Lebanon. Egyptian-style pottery is imported and locally made, perhaps being manufactured by Egyptian potters dwelling in Palestine. Again, what period is this? This is the Naqada period, Naqada 2 and Naqada 3 period. Again, 3500 BCE to 3000 BCE. This was what was going on. Egyptian-style vessels amount to 80% of the ceramics in North Sinai and up to the 20% of the pottery at sites in southern Palestine. E.g., remember E.g., whenever you see that E period, G period, which is, I believe, is a Latin term, which means, for example, Ein Besor. It says some pots bear the Syriac names of kings Ka and Scorpion. Other Egyptian products include copper tools, flints, pallets, calcite, and faience containers, clay ceilings, mace heads, jewelry, and now mollusks and catfish. Egyptian-style mud brick buildings also appear, e.g., Erini, while some human remains resemble African. Wait a minute. You have African human remains in the Levant during the Naqada period. Let me say that again. You have African human remains in ancient Levant, in Lebanon, in the Transjordan, Megiddo, during the Naqada period, 3500 to 3000 BCE. So when anyone tells you this has nothing to do with quote unquote African people, that these areas have nothing to do with quote unquote African people, you understand? They are spreading disinformation. They are not studied. They are not scholarly. Because this has been going on since the Chalcolithic, the Copper period. Let's keep reading. While some human remains resemble African, i.e., Egyptian populations, this may reflect Egyptian imperialism, peaceful colonization, or intense trade. Egyptian pottery, mace heads, and pallets reach Byblos, which is in Lebanon, with additional Egyptian pottery at Habuba Kabira, North Syria, and possible Egyptian-derived gold at Tepe Guara in Mesopotamia. So during this Naqada period, Naqada 2 and Naqada 3 period, we can see that trade, material culture, African remains, human remains were replete in these areas in North Syria, Lebanon, Megiddo, Transjordan, all throughout Palestine and the North Sinai. We can clearly see that. It says, in conjunction with an intense Mesopotamian material presence and an influence in late pre-dynastic First Dynasty Egypt, Syrian ports such as Byblos probably serve as a conduits for maritime trade with Egypt. So anybody saying, again, these areas didn't have nothing to do with African people or what we call black or whatever, they are spreading disinformation because we have the evidence during the Naqada period that they were there doing trade, spreading material culture, radiating, creating. Okay, settling, because we read earlier that some of this pottery that we're finding could have been created by actual Egyptian potters living in these lands. All right, now, from the pre-dynastic period, we stretch to the early dynastic period. And the early dynastic period begins, I believe, 3000 BCE? Right here. Early dynastic period begins around 3000 BCE. So this is the time period that we're about to speak on. All right. So early Bronze Age 2. In the first dynasty, Egyptian contact with southern Palestine intensifies and includes imported and locally made pottery and striped vessels bearing the Syriac names of kings Narmer, Hor-Aha, Din, and Anijib. clay ceilings, stone vessels, a knife handle, and Egyptian-style architecture, e.g., Irani. Narmer's name occurs on a potsherd reassigned to level 3 from Arad, in an important town along the copper trade routes from the southern Sinai and Wadi Fanan. The Palermo stone, which lists pharaohs from the 1st and 5th dynasty, mentions Den attacking the Awanu people, known in southern Sinai during the Old Kingdom. Commodity dockets from his reign also portray him smiting Asiatics. In the 2nd dynasty, a dramatic drop occurred in Egypt's material political domination of southern Palestine. King Sekhmib Mayat is identified on stone vessels that cite tribute of foreign lands, which might allude to the residual political influence over Palestine. In general, however, Egypto-Levantine maritime commerce flourishes in the 2nd to 6th dynasties. The Palermo stone notes shipbuilding by Kaish Kimwe, whose name appears on a stone vessel at Byblos. A 2nd and 3rd dynasty calcite jar from Byblos names Nefershemir or Miri, a scribe of the royal tree cutters, while Egyptian-style pottery is found in the Amuk region of Syria. So we can see during this early dynastic period from 3000 to the 6th dynasty. Let's get it. So the 6th dynasty is 2345 to 2181. So from almost a millennium, almost 1,000 years, from 3000 BCE to 2181, this period we see wars, we see invasions, we see trade going on between Egypt and the Levant. Now we're going to go to the Old Kingdom, which begins. The Old Kingdom starts right here at 2181, where we left off, the first intermediate period, and then it goes into the Dynasty 7, which again 2181 is when that begins. All right, so let's get to it. Old Kingdom, early Bronze Age 3 period. Large Levantine urban centers prospered throughout EB3, which is early bronze, but many sites are abandoned or destroyed toward the end of this period. Early Bronze 3 coincides with much of the 4th and 6th dynasties, when Egyptian artifacts diminish but are still found in Palestine, e.g. Tel Yarmouk. Conversely, Old Kingdom Egypt produces a peak in a Canaanite comb ware, possibly reflecting otherwise invisible Levantine trade or booty. For instance, the 5th dynasty tombs of Inti and Kamhesit illustrate Egyptian attacks against Asiatic strongholds. The Palermo stone alludes to maritime contact with Byblos to retrieve cedar, which is confirmed by cedar scaffolding in Sneferu's Dashir pyramids. So here's Mortuary's temple portrays ships bringing bears, pottery, and male and female Asiatics to Egypt. This is why, again, we cannot say that Egypt was a uniform people, because we see people being brought in, we see trade, we see all of these things happening. So the Palermo stone alludes to that maritime contact, and we can see that they brought male and female Asiatics to Egypt. It says a temple and cemetery at Byblos contain Egyptianizing architectural fragments, statuary, stone vessels, and other items, some of which bear the names of most kings from the 4th and 6th dynasties. The intensity of the Old Kingdom contact with Byblos may imply some Egyptian administrative control or alliance. Some Egyptian administrative control or alliance securing this port for overland trade with Syria, Mesopotamia, and Afghanistan. For example, so again, they still remember we read the Nakada period where they were doing that trade during that time, and it continued to spill over for the next millennium under the 4th and 6th dynasties. It says, for example, Khafre and Pepe the first names are attested on items further inland at Ebla, while Menakar is identified with artifacts from Cyprus. And we all know about the Eblite tablets. That's famous. The Ebla tablets are one of the most famous things, mentioning people like Abraham, mentioning King Ebrium, which many speculate that King Ebrium was Eber, the actual biblical patron known as Eber. While Menakari is identified with artifacts from Cyprus. So again, these names, the fact that they know these names and writing these names down shows a connection between the Levant and Egypt during the Old Kingdom as well. Now, we're going to move from there to the first intermediate period, which begins 2180. Intermediate Bronze Age. The Intermediate Bronze Age is marked by political decentralization in Egypt, dramatic deurbanization in Palestine, a reappearance of seasonal settlements in North Sinai and the Negev, and somewhat impoverished settlements in Syria. Although few Egyptian artifacts appear in Palestine, Egyptian medium-ware vessels and Palestinian caliciform pottery occurs at campsites across North Sinai, which suggests some late Old Kingdom overland interactions with southern Palestine around this time. A mid-6th dynasty official, Wanay, claims to have led 5 military campaigns against Asiatic sand dwellers somewhere in Sinai or Palestine. Although Egypt maintained relations with Syria until the end of the 6th dynasty, first intermediate period Egypt yields little evidence for trade, while later propagandist texts, the Ipawar, Nefertiti, and Merikari harken back to Asiatic incursions, a cessation of trade with Byblos, and other problems. And from there, we're going to go to the Middle Kingdom. A lot of us are familiar with the Middle Kingdom because that's the period that we purport the Israelites were there. So let's go and see what time period we're talking about. The Middle Kingdom is here. Right here. The Middle Kingdom starts here. Middle Dynasty 11, Middle Dynasty 13, 255 to 1773 BCE. All right, so let's get back to the page we're on. First Intermediate Middle Kingdom. Middle Bronze Age 2A period, MB2A, experiences the rebirth of urbanization in Palestine in a reunified Middle Kingdom state. Montuhotep II, the 11th dynasty, claims he pacified hostile Asiatics and reestablished trade. Late 11th dynasty inscriptions reveal activity in Qadem, which was Syria, which is modern Syria, a siege of an Asiatic fort, a campaign against the Asiatic Dajidi, and a mission to obtain cedar from Lebanon. In the 12th dynasty, the story of Sinuhe describes his flight to Syria, Palestine, encounters with Egyptian messengers, Egyptian fugitives, and people conversing in Egyptian, but omits mentions of cities. Now, when you deal with the story of Sinuhe, it also mentions someone named Abu Rahani, Abu Raham, right? And him being a ruler of a region in Palestine, which will be direct attestation to Abraham. Let's keep reading. It says, the satire of trades emphasizes the danger of lions and Asiatics to Egyptian messengers traveling through Palestine. In another account, Amenemhat II sends troops and 10 ships to the Cain Tiushe on the Lebanese coast to obtain raw materials, booty, and captives. In Sanhosret III's reign, an Egyptian officer, Kusobek, claims to have killed an Asiatic warrior in an attack against Sekhmim, which is Shechem, while a commander of troops under Amenemhat III is described as opening the land of the Asiatic. The Egyptian extrication text lists potential enemy towns, including Shechem, Ashkelon, Jerusalem, and Byblos, while inscriptions from Mit Rahini allude to treaties between Egypt and some Levantine city-states. Why is that huge? Why is that important? Because that means what we read in Genesis about these different localities, Shechem, Jerusalem, Ashkelon, and so forth, Byblos, and so forth. Some of these localities we can see have been attested in history. You understand? In the extrication texts mention Abraham, Abrahani, as they say it in the Meta Netter, as a real person that ruled over Shechem. It says, in contrast, peaceful relations are evident with Byblos. The royal cemetery and temple have Egyptian-style architecture, statuary, stone vessels, and other artifacts with private and royal inscriptions. Amenemhat III to the fourth. 9 royal tombs display Egyptian-style scenes, hieroglyphic texts, and titles, count and hereditary prints, with evidence for the worship of Egyptian and Canaanite deities. Ugarit has yielded probable Egyptian royal gifts, a statue of a daughter of Amenemhat II, and 2 sphinx of Amenemhat III. Earlier theories for a Middle Kingdom empire in Palestine remain unfounded, especially since most 12th dynasty statuary originates from later contexts. The otherwise abundant Middle Kingdom text lacks evidence for any imperial administration in Palestine, but recent investigations reveal more significant trade relations between Egypt and Palestine. Sites such as Tel Ifshar and Ashkelon are producing Egyptian-style pottery, calcite and faience vessels, scarabs, and jewelry. Some Cypro-Egyptian relations are also attested by pottery exchange between both regions. So more of the same, we start seeing this trade, wars, rumors of wars or whatnot, invasions between the two, Egypt into the Levantine area. So again, we're going to the second intermediate period now. Go back to page 4. Know what time we are at now. The second intermediate period began 1773 in Dynasty 14, all right, BCE. And it goes to 1550 BCE, Dynasty 15. So let's get back to where we are in the book. Second intermediate period, which is the Middle Bronze Age 2B period. MB2B experiences a continued growth in the number and size of settlements in Palestine and prosperity in Syria. This coincides with the 13th dynasty and the 14th and 16th dynasties, which develop into the Hyksos and Theban kingdoms, respectively. Although Egypt grows weaker politically, it maintains relations with Syria. Byblos contains items bearing the names of Amenemhat V, Sahet-Tebin Enre, and Nefer-Hotep the First. Nefer-Hotep appears in a hieroglyphic text from a tomb stele of Prince Yantin, who also adopts an Egyptian-style sarcophagus. Jewelry from a palace at Ebla bears the name of Sheptepibre. While Amenemhat V is cited on an artifact from Jericho, these strong links with Egypt are paralleled by a growing Levantine presence in the northeast delta. So we see a strong Levantine presence in the northeast delta during the 13th dynasty. The Canaanite pottery increases from the 20% to 40% at Avaris. Why is that important? Because Avaris was the place that we knew that the Asiatics were going to, and the place where we knew, according to the Israelite narrative, Israelites were founded and located at, right? Further Asiatic influence occurs in copper working, weaponry, contracted burials, associated donkey burials, and a seal of a deputy treasurer called Amu. Avaris has some Levantine-style temples, possibly dedicated to Baal Zaphon. Nearby Tel El Yahudiye even adopts a Canaanite-style rampart fortification. So we can see these things, and we know that these Asiatics would do these donkey burials. So when you see the donkey being buried, that was an Asiatic practice. And we see that in Egypt, in the Delta, and Avaris, we know Asiatics were living in those areas at that time because that was a practice known to them. That's called material culture. We can know what type of people were there by the culture that they leave behind. All right, so now we're going to the Middle Bronze Age 2C period. MB2C spans the Hyksos and Theban kingdoms of the 15th and 17th dynasties, respectively, during which Hyksos, Egypt, exports jewelry, scarabs, and calcite vessels to the Levant. Some Canaanite officials apply Egyptian-style seals on the amphorae. One Canaanite amphora sent to the Avaris bore a hieroglyphic seal with an Egyptian title, Mayor, and Semitic name, Shem. Residue analysis indicates the exportation of olive oil, probably wine, and possibly wheat to Egypt. So again, we had this title, honorific title, or the title Mayor, and had the Semitic name Shem, which is powerful information. And that was in Egypt. You know what I'm saying? I'm pretty sure Jabari and all these other quote unquote Egyptians online, you internet Egyptians, are not going to bring this part of Egyptian history out. But that's fine. This is what the source does. We do this. We extrapolate this information from source material and feed it to the general public. Let's keep going. It says small perfume juglets, Yahudiye wear, apparently originated in northern Palestine, but soon became manufactured throughout Syria, Palestine, Cyprus, and Egypt. So we had these perfume juglets that were beginning to radiate into Egypt during this time of the Hisco period and this time of the period of Asiatics settling in these localities. It says displaying local variance in trade between these regions. The Camo Stele also described the diversity of Levantine trade in a list of booty from Avaris Harbor. Lapis lazuli, turquoise, silver, battle axes, oils, fats, honey, cedar, and precious woods. Cyprot contact with Avaris is attested by white painted V to the 6 proto white slip 1, and bichrome pottery. Although scholars originally theorized that the Hyksos Empire encompassed the Levant, the evidence suggests only commercial and political alliances. King Ahmose ends this Asiatic domination, defeating the Hyksos at Avaris and pursuing them across North Sinai to the Shadruhan Tel Ajul, which he captured after 3 years. Okay, from this period, now we're going to go to the New Kingdom period and show the connection during this period. Now we can see this is a long history. We started prior to 35, really 5,000 BCE, really going to be technical, of having evidence of this connection between Egypt and Levant. And now we're in the Bronze Age. You understand? We're going towards 1500 BCE now. So you're talking about almost, 4,000 years of history of these two localities having a strong relation and a strong sense of trade with each other? Why is this not being talked about on Sinetta TV? Why are these Cometians or these Egyptians on Sinetta TV not bringing this history out? Why are these people, period, Egyptologists, why are they not bringing these so-called black consciousness and these woke people, why are they not reading this? Why are they not extrapolating this type of information, disseminating this type of information? What are you studying for if you're not going to bring this history out and bring it to the forefront? All right, we're going to go back to page 94 to know when the New Kingdom started. They gave us a nice chart to go by. So the New Kingdom starts here, 1550 to 1457 BC. All right. So let's go. Let's make sure that's the Egypt side that we're on. Yeah, the Egyptian dynasty is on the left. All right. So yeah, 1550 is when the New Kingdom starts. So let's get to the literature. And let's break this down. All right, so late Bronze Age 1A. LB 1A spans from the early 18th dynasty, during which the Egypt began establishing its Levantine Empire. Egypt applies periodic military force to pacify and extort annual tribute from city-states. Various inscriptions allude to Ahmose fighting the Fanku in Syria and capturing Asiatics and oxen. So again, we just learned that King Ahmose is also the person who ended the Hyksos rule. So that's something you guys want to take notes on. If you're taking notes, that's something you need to write down. That's a very pivotal point in history. Redford identifies a fragmentary text from Karnak Temple with Amenhotep I attacking Syria and retrieving unguents and other things from Kedem, which is Shechem. Oh no, Kedem is Syria, Tunip, and elsewhere. A later text described Thutmose I as having reached the Euphrates and erected a stele. Although official accounts assert that he faced no resistance and collected cedar, copper, and gifts, several officers' biographies mention fighting, booty, and prisoners. Amos Payne Nekbek also describes fighting the Shasu Bedouin for Thutmose II. During Hatshepsut's reign, the spells, Artemidos, and other inscriptions allude to military activity in Syria-Palestine. This may represent an inspection tour collecting tribute and cedar. Regarding selected Levantine sites and artifacts, Egyptian and Egyptian-style items form 22% to 10% and 7% of non-pottery artifacts within mortuary, habitation, and cultic context, respectively. Mainly ceramic, stone, and faience containers, clay ceilings, and jewelry, which we've been reading about this whole time. That's always been a dead giveaway for Egyptian influence. And when it says mortuary, we talk about burial practices and stuff of that nature. It says toiletries, game pieces, sonnet, and figurines. Aside from only 2 items bearing Thutmose's first name in Syria, the names of all other early 18th dynasty rulers appear on items throughout Palestine. Hence, in addition to trade, Egypt now begins extorting annual tribute and directly retrieving materials, products, livestock, and captives via intimidation and increasing raids. So anybody saying that Egypt didn't deal with slavery, you can see that they're extracting captives during this period, during the New Kingdom period. So that's thrown in the water. That's thrown in the trash if you're saying they didn't deal with enslavement. They were enslaving these Asiatic people. Okay, late bronze 1B period. In year 22, Thutmose III besieges Megiddo and captures many rulers from a coalition of 330 Levantine city-states led by the ruler of Kadesh. He accepts new oaths of allegiance, builds a fort in the Levant, and imposes more direct military control over Syria-Palestine. He consolidates the Northern Empire through 16 further expeditions, inspection tours, tribute collection, and fighting in West Syria and Naharaim. Like Thutmose I, he reaches the Euphrates, where he places another stele, hunts elephants, and records exotic flora, which flora just means plants. His son, Amenhotep II, faces increasing rebellions in Syria. In Palestine, Shemesh Edom, because that's some people they were fighting against, the Shemesh Edom, or Shamash Edom. The next ruler, Thutmose IV, is notable for establishing peace and for a marriage alliance with Mitanni to counteract the expanding Hittite Empire. Despite this alliance, Thutmose IV needs to suppress rebellious Syrian vassals and establish a fort nearby. Egypt's Levantine Empire is subdivided into provinces: Canaan, Palestine, Upe, Damascus, Tebeka Valley, and Amaru, which is West Syria, with headquarter cities at Gaza, Qumidi, and Ugarit, later Sumer. Each regional headquarters receives a fort and storehouse with a commander and garrison. During the LB, or late bronze 1B period, Egyptian-style artifacts rise to 40% in Levantine cemeteries, increase to 13% in temples, and fall to 9% in occupation contexts. A corresponding rise occurs in the quantities and dispersal of Egyptian royal name items, mostly scarabs. These Egyptian imports and local copies include ceramic, stone, faience, and glass containers, clay ceilings, jewelry, toiletries, sonnet pieces, figurines, utensils, axes, and chariot fitting. Most of the items indicate luxury trade goods with a few products of domestic usage. Late Bronze Age 2A period. The LB28 begins with Amenhotep III, who publicizes his marriage to the Median princess on a commemorative scarab sent to vassals and kingdoms in the eastern Mediterranean. During this period, the Amarna letters, which span the reigns of Amenhotep III and Tutankhamun, provide a major source on relations between Egypt, its northern vassals, and their eastern kingdoms. And I want to make commentary on this as well. The Amarna letters is a period of time where Palestine is being attacked by these foreigners. Many call them the Habaru, the Hapiru, or what have you. And one of these people are called Yeshaya. And from my study, that Yeshaya is actually Joshua. So again, we can make a strong argument for the settlement of Canaan by Israelites or by these foreigners or these Asiatic Hebrew foreigners or whatever you want to call them, Habaru, whatever, being the actual Israelite incursion. Because right after that period, we see Israel being established as polity in the British Foot Stele, and also we see it in the Merneptah Stele, which the scholarly consensus in the Merneptah Stele that is talking about Israel being a people and a polity being established in that region. And what we're reading in our Amarna letters could very well be the establishing of this people in that region. All right, let's keep reading. It said the letters consist of clay tablets in the Akkadian cuneiform and reveal conflict between Akhenaten's northernmost vassals. Despite frequent pleas to Akhenaten for aid, his western Syrian vassals of Sumer, Tunip, and Byblos are attacked and captured by another vassal, the Amuru. Such neglect encourages Kadesh, a major vassal state straddling a strategic commercial route between Mesopotamia and the Mediterranean, to defect to the Hittite empires, evading an apparent attempt to regain it in year 15. Tutankhamun sends an army to resume control over the Amuru, but its outcome is unclear in relations with the Hatti deteriorate during his successor's reign. The Hittite annals record that Suppilulimas attacked Egypt's northern frontier in retaliations for the alleged murder of the Hittite prince who had been sent to Egypt to marry a widowed Egyptian queen. At the LB2A sites, Egyptian artifacts fall sharply to 25% and 7% in mortuary and occupation contexts, but increases to 27% in cultic settings. Royal name items also decline in quantity through this period. This trend argues for a reduction in Egyptian influence in everyday life in Canaan, while the rise in cultic context might imply the retention of increasingly valued votives. On the other hand, the broad categories of Egyptianizing artifacts noted in the late Bronze 1A to B period continue, while some new types appear: a headrest, different figurines, and molds for making Egyptian type beads and amulets. These sporadic molds imply some efforts to supplement the decreasing, albeit still valued, imported Egyptian jewelry with cheaper local imitations. We're going to the late Bronze Age 2B period. LB2B encompasses the 19th dynasty and the intensification of Egyptian control and presence in the Levant. Inscriptions from the Karnak Temple and elsewhere record Ramesses I and his co-regent, Seti I, repressing the Shashu Bedouin uprising in the Sinai, Palestine. Seti I also rescued the Egyptian garrison at Bet Shean and Rahab from attacks by Hamath, Pella, and the Aparu. The Hittite Caesar of Cyprus and its copper mines probably encourages Seti I to expand copper mining in the eastern desert Sinai and southern Negev to maintain Egypt's war machine. And also that word Aparu by Doug, what's his name? I'm trying to think of the name. I have the book here somewhere. Right here. The world's oldest alphabet. I have it in my hand. Douglas Petrovich. He gives the comparison, which was a real powerful argument. I think I used it in my debate against DJ Shonsky. that word Aparu, Hebrew, and I think retinue all had the same meaning, if I'm remembering correctly. So when we see that word Aparu could easily mean Hebrew or be a strong cognate. You know what I'm saying? Because again, we're dealing with the realm of possibilities and speculation on this. I don't own a time machine. Well, we're going to use deductive reasoning on that. A lot of people act like they own a time machine. So that's why I say this: the likelihood or the possibility of degrees of plausibility, I would say, could point to that reality. And it's not really a stretch. So he talks about the retinue people in Egyptian texts are found in the biography of Senuhe. And the retinue represent Levantines, people from the Levant. And that coupled with that word Aparu and Habaru and retinue all denoting the same thing. I really want to find it for you guys, but I know I have it in my presentation that I used against DJ Shonsky to show that we did have a material culture. Let's see if I can find it here. I know it's on one of my note cards in here. If not, I will refer to my actual PowerPoint and just pull it from there. I actually took a picture of this page because I don't have the digitized version. I have the actual physical copy of Douglas Petrovich's work, which is a very good book, by the way. Anybody that's studying this comes from the Israelite ideology or even the Egyptian ideology should get Douglas Petrovich's work and his paleographic decipherments of the Sinai inscriptions. Very interesting, very intriguing, and insightful for that period of time. And of course, since I'm live, I'm not going to be able to pull the reference. All right, so what I will do, let me open my PowerPoint and just show you the page. All right, just bear with me. We're on page 100 to 101. We're almost through this. Just bear with me while I pull this up because I really want to bring up that Aparu, the Aparu people. Because a lot of people have arguments, but again, like, give me some citations. I don't want to hear your opinion, just your opinion alone. Just show me a citation to back up your opinion, please. And then we can have an actual conversation. You understand? Let's see. Open other presentations. I did this presentation a while ago, but it's very intriguing what Douglas Petrovich brought up with his paleographic information. And for anyone saying that there was no Hebrew culture, you're sadly mistaken. You know, you have these people. Here it is right here. You have these people that try to advocate for these different weird arguments that doesn't make any sense, like saying, oh, well, you don't have anything such as a Hebrew till the Greeks came. And like, what? How do you study archaeology? Do you study these things? Are you reading these writings? Or are you just going off the cuff? All right, here it is right here. The paleographic evidence of the Hebrews. It says the third word would read for Ibri or Ibir. Remarkably, the biblical Hebrew word for Hebrew is Ibri. And that's page number 23 is where I got that from. Page number 23 in his book. And it breaks down that word Ibri. In the retinue, it says since Habetic clearly wrote a Levantine form for retinue, perhaps the Asiatic wrote Semitic word here instead of an Egyptian word. Remarkably, the Hebrew word for Hebrew is Ibri. If this were the case, perhaps one would expect the im suffix to be added to the word to pluralize it, given that the 6 Levantines who were mentioned immediately beforehand are in a apposition to the third word In the caption, after all, Hebrews written Ephraim seems to be written in the absolute state, and 6 Levantines were mentioned, not one. So again, he brings up the word Ebir in the Sinai inscriptions, and he equates that to the Aparu, the Hebrew. Right here, it says one highly plausible scenario might even account for the absence of the ayin guttural. No one disputes that the Aparu and the Habaru, the graphic equivalent of Habaru, are equated. Given that the latter term was used in Mesopotamian and cuneiform texts during the dating to almost 2000 BCE. And the biblical text states that Abram derived from Ur of the Chaldeans, which is located in southern Mesopotamia. Abram probably would not have begun the word for his nationality with a guttural if he was an ethnic Habaru. So again, he's giving these arguments that all these words mean the same thing. The Ebir, the retinue, mentioning Ebir, and Habaru, being used in the Mesopotamian context, and so on and so forth. All right, so that's Douglas's Petrovic's, the world's oldest alphabet, page 23 and 24, goes over those comparisons and the similitudes between them. So we can make that argument when it says Aparu, it's actually talking about Hebrews. And I brought that up because here on page 100, it brings up Seti the First rescuing Egyptian garrisons at Beth Shean, Rahab from attacks by Hamath, the Pella, and the Aparu. Top left corner, highlighted in green. All right, so let's keep reading. And that was a reference from Kitchen, and we know Kitchen was a proponent of the Israelites in that time period. It says the Hittite seizure of Cyprus and its copper mines probably encourages Seti I to expand copper mining in the eastern desert, Sinai, and southern Negev to maintain Egypt's war machine. He briefly regained Kadesh in years 5 and 6, erecting commemorative stelae at Kadesh, Tyre, Tel El Shihab, and Beth Shean. Hati's reabsorption of Amaru and Kadesh prompted Ramesses II's year 4 and 5 campaigns to retake them. Despite claims of victory, his failure to secure Kadesh generates rebellions throughout Palestine and emerging polities in Seir, Edom, and Moab, and Transjordan, which is also a reference from Kitchen. Again, these places, these people, these polities existed. Edom existed, Moab existed. These are real people, which means that the Genesis account, the Numbers account, the early biblical literature is grounded in historical reality. Let's keep going. He reestablishes control in years 6 to 7, 8 to 9, and 10. By year 21, a rising Assyrian threat encourages Hattusilis III to make peace with Ramesses II, who marries 2 Hittite princesses to cement relations with Hatti. Although peace and commerce continue between Hatti and Egypt, Merneptah needs to suppress rebellions in Palestine in year 5 when Israel is first listed amongst Egypt's enemies. Let me read that again. Merneptah needs to suppress rebellions in Palestine in year 5 when Israel is first listed amongst Egypt's enemies. I want to make commentary on this portion because many of you argue against the Merneptah Stela and say it does not say Israel when that's the scholarly consensus that it does say Israel, and it does denote that there are polity and the people living in that region at that time during the reign of Merneptah. And he's writing about suppressing these rebellions that's going on in Palestine during his 5th year of reigning. All right, so during LB 2B, which is the late Bronze 2B period, but including the late Bronze through to the end of the Iron 1A, a broad range of Egyptian gifts, payments, merchandise, possessions, livestock, personnel, and other influences reached Egyptian garrisons, merchants, and other residents in Canaan and Cyprus. This includes the rulers, elite, and general populace amongst Egypt's Canaanite vassals and adjacent kingdoms. Texts from Amarna, Ugarit, Hattusas, and elsewhere cite Egyptian and Cushite residents, servants, traders, messengers, soldiers, and others serving and dwelling throughout Syria, Palestine. For example, Ugarit. And sometimes mentions marriages with Asiatics. So again, you have these people intermingling all throughout the Levant. So when you bring up Egypt, why are these people not bringing up the relation and interrelation between the Levant, the trade, the marriage, the peoples, the human remains, the practices? Why are they not bringing that up? Why is this a silent issue? Why is this a silent issue amongst the woke crowd? These pro-blacks, these Egyptomaniacs, why are they not speaking about these relationships at all? But this will also explain this relationship between Levant and Egypt. Will also explain Abraham going to Egypt and how he was able to go there, and Joseph and so on and so forth, because you can clearly see these two localities have always been engaging in trade and interacting with each other. It said, after being raised in Pharaoh's household, Comp, and adopting the Egyptian language, dress, and customs, many Canaanite princes are returned to inherit and govern their city-states, thereby introducing a hybrid Egypto-Levantine influence into local leadership and associated population. So that's very interesting. During this time period, you had a lot of Canaanite personnel and people going in, being raised up in Pharaoh's household, adopting the Egyptian language, so on and so forth, like Moses would have done. Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He knew their language, he knew their culture, he knew their cultic practices, because he grew up in Pharaoh's household. So again, that story is grounded in reality, whether you think it didn't happen or not. This is what was taking place during those time periods. So how somebody during the Greek period is just going to come up with all of this and hit it right on the head is beyond me to get this accurate of information of what was going on during the time period in question. The likelihood of that happening is slim to none. So a lot of y'all got to bow down and kiss the ring on this one. All right. So that was going on. You did have foreigners that will raise up in Pharaoh's household and learn all of the ways of that said people. All right. Let's keep reading. At the late bronze 2B sites, Egyptian and Egyptian style artifacts remain high, 25% in mortuary assemblages, and rise to 13%, 32% in occupation and in cultic context. Egyptian style items now display the greatest quantity and variety of types. This continuity and increase probably reflect the intensification of Ramesside garrisons in Canaan, especially under Seti I, Ramses II. Likewise, royal name items increased in early 19th dynasty, but declined noticeably in the remainder of this period. Egyptian exports include raw materials, pottery jars, and other containers for provisions. Cultic items, for example, female figurines and cobras, and luxury items, for example, linen, textiles, furniture, sonnet boards, cosmetic kits, jewelry, and wine drinking sets. Such things were conveyed via state, temple, and private shipping, overland traffic, and cross-cultural correspondence. The presence of Egyptian and other types of weights emphasized the multicultural commerce between Canaan and its neighbors. Let me pause for a second. If you're commenting on the video right now, I cannot see it while I'm engaged in reading in the book. I will address every comment at the end of the reading, every comment at the end of what I'm doing and the breakdown or whatnot. So I will do that at the end of the video. So that's just for anybody that's commenting in the back chats right now, or in the messenger or whatever, or on the YouTube or on Facebook. I will address that towards the end. So just bear with me. So we're at the bottom. The blue highlighted portion is what I'm going to read next. It says the increasing local production of Egyptian domestic pottery and other items in LB, late bronze 2B, iron 1A attest to both a greater influx of Egyptians and Canaanite desire for cheaper Egyptian style products. Ramesside garrisons are particularly evident through Egyptian forts and housing at such sites as Beth Shean, Deir el-Balah, Tel Mor, Ashkelon, Tel Afek, and Tel Es Sadiyeh. These sites have yielded Egyptian-style chariot fittings, weaponry, mace heads, kafesh swords, axe heads, and other utensils. Some sites produce hieroglyphs and stone gateways, doorways, statuary, stelae, and various artifacts. For example, jewelry. An Egyptian cursive script, hieratic, is also used by the imperial administration, for example, on inscribed pottery vessels, jar sealings, a large stamp seal of Ptah and ostraca. Several pharaohs add commemorative monuments, especially Ramses II, who was attested on stone blocks in Gaza, lentils in Jaffa, biblos, and stelae from Beth Shean, Sheikh said, Tyre, Ablun, Nahir el Keb, Byblos, and Quesi near Damascus. Egyptian administrative and residential buildings are remodeled and contain Egyptian-style components, central column halls, T-shaped doorways, door jambs, and hieroglyphic inscriptions and stelae. A reassessment of the fort of Deir el-Balah demonstrates that the adjacent reservoir actually functioned as a quarry for mud bricks. Egyptian influence also affects temples at garrison sites. The level 7 temple at Beth Shean has similarities to Egyptian shrines at El Armana and Deir el Medine, but is a hybrid Egypto-Levantine shrine. Alongside Levantine votives, it contains numerous Egyptian and Egyptian-style artifacts, including stelae reused in Iron 1A temple. A similar hybrid temple and votives occur in level 6 at Lachish, while elsewhere purely Levantine temples such as shrines F and H at Hazar have produced fewer Egyptianized items. So at Lachish, you have these what they call an Egyptian hybrid Levantine shrines found there. Because again, a lot of these Israelites, a lot of these people living in these lands were borrowing and practicing syncretism. That's why they got punished. That's in the Bible. So again, another pivotal point being pointed out and reflecting historical reality in your Bible, because that's what they were doing. They were mixing these Egyptian cultic practices, style, and living with Yahwistic cultic practices. All right. The garrison burials at Deir el-Balah, Tel el-Farah, and Beth Shean have produced locally made Egyptian-derived terracotta anthropoid coffins. I also want to point out something about that terracotta, because we see that terracotta making its way all the way to West Africa. And only people carry material culture, not sandstorms, not natural phenomena. People have to carry the material culture to these different places. Local grotesque variants and sporadic funerary figurines. In addition, Deir el-Balah has yielded 4 mortuary stelae dedicated to Osiris, while Tel el-Sadiyeh has evidence for mummification by Egyptian residents or Canaanites emulating Egyptian elite burial practices. One adult's rib cage had been cut, possibly to remove internal organs. Several bodies bore linen wrappings preserved via impressions, a black resin, bitumen, coating covered other bodies. So we have proof. Again, we can see this material culture from Egypt making its way in all over the Levant, all over these areas like Syria, where you can see mummification. We see that these people were there, or people that are influenced by these people were there. So anybody that wants to be a pro-Egyptologist commission, you cannot cut the Levant out of your history, because the Levant encompasses Egyptian history as well, because they were interrelated. They had trade. That the people were going back and forth from each locality. So again, we started in the pre-dynastic period before 3200 BCE, and we're in the Iron Age 1A period, which is going towards 1000 BCE. You understand? We're well into 5,000 years of history here. So you're trying to truncate the Levantine history is being disingenuous. When we're going to start seeing this history being spoke of or brought up by brothers that purport to be pro-Egyptian? When are we going to start doing that? You got to start pointing that out. Or you got a narrative to sell? Is that what's going on? All right, now we're going to transition to the Iron Age 1A period. Iron Age 1A spans the early 20th dynasty and the decline of Egypt's Levantine Empire, during which the Sea Peoples' coastal raids and overland migrations by displaced populations destroyed or transformed many Eastern Mediterranean polities. And this is why we have the relationship between David and the Phoenician king, or the king of Tyre, King Hiram, right? Because these people became very powerful during the Iron Age 1A period. Ramesses III claims victories in Palestine and the Delta and later dispatches troops against hostile Bedouin and Seir and Edom. In a summation of his reign, the Great Harris Papyrus describes the temple of Amun, Thebes, Rabe, Heliopolis, and Ptah, Memphis, as owning estates in Syria, Palestine, including ships to retrieve annual revenues. His successor, Ramesses IV, reportedly received tribute, cedar, and slaves from the Levant and may have subjugated Asiatics. So again, more evidence of slaves. So anybody trying to say that Egypt never dealt with slavery, stop it. That's ahistorical, meaning it's against history and you're not dealing honestly. You understand? That's disinformation. Egypt retains some control over Canaan as late as Ramesses VI, whose name occurs on a ring from Deir el-Balah, a bronze statue based at Megiddo, and possibly a scarab from Alak. Hence, this is a turbulent period in which Egypt exerts diminishing control and influence over its vassal states as far as Bethshan. So when you start going to the Iron Age, we start seeing the decrease of Egyptian control of the Levant. Egypt's presence and influence within the Levant apparently peaks during the Ramesside period, which is attested by both locally made Egyptian pottery and other artifacts and influences. Non-pottery items from selected Iron 1A sites reveal a similar rise in Egyptian-style influence in mortuary assemblages. 35% in occupation context, 17%, with a drop to 26% in cultic settings. These items contain a broad range of pottery, faiences, stone and metal containers, jar ceilings, utensils, cosmetic kits, jewelry, sonnet pieces, and cobra figurines. At Egypt's northern base at Bethshan, Egypto-Levantine-style temples and adjacent houses are built in stratum 6, but incorporate many earlier. Egyptian-style architectural pieces, column bases, papyrus capitals, cornice fragments, door jambs, lintels, and stelae. A statue of Ramesses III, a lintel of one of his officers, and other architectural fittings were reused in the Stratum 5 temple, but demonstrate the presence of an Iron 1A Egyptian garrison here. Likewise, Lachish yielded a bronze gate plaque of Ramesses III, confirming his control over another key Canaanite town. The cemeteries at both Beth-Shean and Lachish also contain Egyptian-style ceramic, anthropoid coffins, and some shawabitis. However, following Ramesses III, a definite decline affects the subsequent 20th dynasty royal name, items, and influence, which become restricted mostly within Egypt's shrinking northern empire. I don't know why the images are not popping up, but all right. So now we're going to the late New Kingdom, to the third intermediate kingdom, and we're going to go back to page 94, and we're on page 104 and 106 to realize what epoch of time we're in now. So we're dealing with the late kingdom. Where is it at? Late kingdom, Iron Age 2B, 2A, Kushite stele. We're not here yet. So I think we're around 1000 BCE. This is the third intermediate where we introduce Israel, Judah, Philistine, and other polities. So I think we're around 1000 BC because we haven't got to the Kushite period yet. All right, so let's go at the 104 and 106. 104 and 106. No, 104 and 106. There, right here. Iron Age 1B. It says the late New Kingdom to the third intermediate period. The late New Kingdom through the Third Intermediate Period marks a virtual dark age regarding textual sources on Egypto-Levantine relations. In early Iron 1B, following the collapse of Egypt's Levantine Empire, Ramesses VIII to 10 are attested on royal name items from Gezer, Tel Farah, Beth Shemesh, and Tel Masos, implying minimal Egyptian state level contact with the eastern periphery of Philistia in southern Judea. Likewise, no evidence exists for any Egyptian campaigns into this region, despite Susanes I's epithet seizure of cities. The fictitious tale of Wanamun, composed in the late 20th dynasty, describes Egyptian emissaries sailing to Byblos under Ramesses X to the 11th to obtain cedar for the sacred Barque of Amun. This tale alludes to a Tejeker coastal settlement at Dor, stressing Egypt's loss of prestige, economic decline, and reliance on foreign shipping. It indicates Egypt's diminished contact with Dor, Tyre, Byblos, and describes Egypt sending royal gifts and payments of gold, silver, linen, papyrus rolls, ropes, cowhides, lentils, and fish to Byblos. It mentions an Egyptian butler and singer residing here, and a townsperson in Cyprus is described as knowing the Egyptian language. In addition, an Assyrian text notes that King Ashurbanipal received an Egyptian gift of a crocodile and monkey, demonstrating significant long-distance diplomacy by post-imperial Egypt. The archaeological record also reveals quantitative shifts in continuity in Egypto-Levantine contact, albeit with minimal presence in Philistia. Egyptian-style artifacts decreased noticeably in mortuary occupation and cultic context. However, these items now appear in a broader social context than before and include pottery, seal impressions, jewelry, luxury containers, figurines, weights, and game boards. The presence of imported Egyptian pottery at Dor and Tel Kassil demonstrates significant maritime commerce between Egypt and northern Palestine. Now we're going to the Iron 2A period, and we know in Israel, the Iron 2A period is a major period for material culture for Israelites. It's a known Israelite period. I've covered this before on the channel. So Iron 2A spans the biblical period of Israel's emergence and domination over Philistia, Edom, Moab, Ammon, and Damascus. Various anachronistic biblical passages mention Egypt selling horses and chariots to Israel, Cushite and Egyptian retainers residing here. A campaign against Gezer, the marriage of an Egyptian princess to Solomon, and Egypt granting asylum to political refugees, Hadad of Egypt and Jeroboam. Kitchen argues that a scene of Siamun executing a captive holding a double axe may reflect an actual Egyptian campaign against Gezer. The best evidence of such activity, however, dates to Shishak, biblical Shishak, who was attested as attacking this region circa 925 BC. In biblical accounts, the Karnak temple lists Egyptian private texts, vague references, and a stale fragment from Megiddo. Although the scope and details in this campaign remain elusive, 1 Kings 14:25 and 27 alleges that Shishak received temple and palace tribute from Jerusalem. Only these pharaohs appear on royal name items in Iron 2A Palestine. Siamun is cited on the scarab at Tel Farah, while Sheshonk I is mentioned on the Megiddo stele and via a statue from Byblos. Egyptian exports and local Phoenician copies also decreased markedly in Levantine occupation, cultic, and mortuary context, pottery, jewelry, luxury goods, weights, a game board, and a Nile fish. Now we go into the Iron 2B period. In conjunction with Assyria's western expansion, the Iron 2B, Egypt alters its attitude towards the Levantine neighbors. An oil jar of Orsorkon II from the palace of Omri and Ahab at Samaria suggests Egyptian diplomatic relationships with Israel. So we know Omri and Ahab were real people. We have the historical attestation for it. The Assyrian monolith inscription shows that Egypt bolsters this relationship by contributing 1,000 troops to a Levantine coalition that defeats Shalmaneser III's army at Qarqar in 853 BC. However, Shalmaneser III later receives exotic animals as tribute from Musri. Egypt. In the following centuries, Assyria dominates Palestine, and Tiglath-Pileser III invades the Levantine coast and establishes a warden at Egypt's eastern frontier by 732 BC. Another Assyrian inscription describes Egypt granting asylum to Hanno, the ruler of Gaza. 2 Kings 17, 1-6 mentions King Hosea of Israel requesting aid from So, king of Egypt, which they think is Osarkon IV, which galvanizes Shalmaneser V into besieging Samaria 725 to 720 BCE. The annals of Sargon II record him capturing Samaria in 720 BCE, deporting the population to Assyria and defeating an Egyptian army. The Assyr prism lists Egypt as sending 12 large horses as a gift to Sargon II. So again, the biblical narrative again encapsulates and the historic reality, Sargon II defeating these Egyptians because that Israel was trying to reach out to them, and he basically showed Egypt ain't nothing, y'all ain't nothing, and he was able to subjugate both parties. Egyptian style artifacts decreased through this period, albeit the fluctuating quantities in occupation and mortuary context, 7 to 10%. An early iron Tubi shrine at Qasil yields few votive offerings, while a late iron Tubi Phoenician shrine at Sarepta held many Egyptian style items, 34%. All of these artifacts display the same broad categories as before, but contain greater diversity within each grouping. This overall decline in Egyptian exports and influence is also matched by relatively few Egyptian royal name items, a vase, scarab, and some statuary of Osarkon I and II at Samaria, Byblos, and in Cyprus. Now we're moving to the Kushite site period, when these Kushites began to rule Egypt. It says various inscriptions detail Assyria's expansion into Palestine and Egypt in Iron IIc period. The Nimrud prism ascribes to Sargon II the reopening of the sealed Karun, 716 BC, and encouraging trade between Egypt, the Levant, and Assyria. The Karun is best identified with a fortified settlement at Tel Kiesh in southern Palestine. The annals of Sargon II and Prism A also relate that a Kushite ruler, Shabako, initially cooperated with Sargon by extraditing a political fugitive, Yamani of Ashdod. In contrast, later biblical and Assyrian texts mention unnamed Kushite rulers, Shabitku and Tarhaka. Now we know who Tarhaka is, right? Allying themselves with Judah to fight Assyria in 701 BC and 681 BC. 2 Kings 18:13-37. From 605 BC, various Assyrian Babylonians and biblical texts describe Egypt assisting Assyria against the Babylonians, including defeating a Judean attempt to thwart Egypt at Megiddo and the eventual Babylonian defeat of the Assyrian and Egyptian armies at Carchemish and Hamat in 605 BC. This overall period and region witnesses a further decline in Egyptian-style artifacts and influence, albeit still retaining all the main categories seen in Iron 1B to 2B. 8% of the tombs and graves from several sites yield Egyptian-style items, amounting to 14% of the mortuary assemblage. In contrast, Egyptizing items compose only 3% of the selected occupation assemblages, while Egyptian-style votives form 5% of the cultic offerings at 3 shrines. So during this period, it had really, the influence from Egypt is really dwindled and waned to a point of almost not even being at 3%, 5%. That's really very, very low. When we read earlier during the intermediate periods or the Middle Kingdom, it was like up to 45%. Like it was high. Like the Egyptian representation in Levant had dropped so much during this period because of the conquering of the Assyrians, the Kushites conquering Egypt, and so on and so forth, that it has started to dwindle. It says other studies, however, reveal a notable presence in Egyptian-style pottery, artifacts, and influence in the 7th century BC at sites such as Ashkelon and Ekron. For instance, Ekron yielded a cachet of New Kingdom heirlooms in a iron 2C context. The appearance of Egyptian hieratic stripped on scarabs, weights, and ostraca, including hen grain measures at some Judean fortresses, parallel the close military and diplomatic relations between Egypt and Judah during the period. So again, more encapsulating of historical reality found in the Bible. A slight increase also occurs in the quantity and dispersal of Egyptian royal name items throughout the Levant. Menakare, Shabako, Taharka, Somtek the first, and Necho the second, which Necho is mentioned and Taharka is mentioned in the Bible. But we can see these royal name items being found in the Levant during this period. From there, we transition to the Babylonian period, 600 BC. It says, following the 605 BC victories, Nebuchadnezzar II consolidates Babylonian control over Syria Palestine. King Adon of Philistia sends a message to Egypt asking for aid, but his plea remained unanswered. Egypt defeats a Babylonian attack in 601 BC. Traces of this or another conflict may materialize in the early destruction debris at Tel Kewa in northwest Sinai. Despite the 597 BCE Babylonian capture of Jerusalem, the Judeans continued sending ambassadors to Egypt to request military assistance. So again, this is also what's written in Ezekiel 17, 11 to 17 is reflected in the archaeological record in anthropology and the history that we're reading. This is what was going on during this period. And we have the evidence, we have the elephantine papyrus showing that you had these Judeans or these Israelites or the Sumerians moving to Egypt. They had fled, just like Jeremiah said, that you had a population of these Judeans living in Egypt. So they were fleeing these different persecutions, and they created and established these different communities during those time periods. It says an Egyptian response may be reflected via Papyrus Rylands IX, which records Somtek II leading an undefined mission to Palestine in 590 BC. Lachish Ashkan III confirms the dispatch of Judean military delegation to Egypt, 589 BC, which preceded Nebuchadnezzar's second siege and destruction of Jerusalem in 589-586 BC. Jeremiah 37:5-11 notes an aborted Egyptian attempt by Apries to relieve the Babylonian siege. After the Babylonian sack of Jerusalem, many Judeans flee to Egypt. Jeremiah 43:5-13, which is supported by an influx of locally made Judean artifacts in the northeast delta. So again, we have material culture to prove that this actually happened, what was recorded in Jeremiah, the 43rd chapter, verse 5-13. Matter of fact, let me get it. I got the Bible right here. I normally don't like reading from the King James Version because I don't like that old English. I like my when I'm reading to you guys to be as fluid as possible. You understand? So Jeremiah chapter 43. You know what a good translation of the Bible that I enjoy reading? I enjoy reading the GNT because it reads well. You understand? It reads very well. It's been modernized so people can get it. So if I go to Jeremiah 43:5, it says, but Jehonan, the son of Kareah, and all the captains of the forces took all the remnant of Judah that were returned from all nations, whether they had been driven to dwell in the land of Judah, even men and women and children and the king's daughters and every person that Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, had left with Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, and Jeremiah the prophet, and the Baruch, son of Neriah. So they came into the land of Egypt, for they obeyed not the voice of the Lord. Thus came they even to Taphanes. So this is why you see them in the northeast delta, and we can see a lot of Judean artifacts during this time period popping up in the northeast delta, because just as what's written in Jeremiah, it occurred. These people fled to Egypt. All right, so let's get back into the reading. So again, we can see that this conforms with historical reality. At some point between 586, we're on the lower left side paragraph, bottom paragraph. It says, at some point between 586 and 570 BC, Apries may have retaliated by sending an Egyptian army against Sidon and a fleet against Tyre. Nebuchadnezzar II apparently fails to capture Egypt in 568-567 BC, while Herodotus attributes Amasis, with launching a subsequent successful naval attack against Cyprus. The Babylonian period also experiences a further decrease in Egyptian-style items, which still represents typical luxury products. Ezekiel 27, 2-15 describes other Egyptian exports as including fine linen for sailcloth, used especially by Tyre, ebony, possibly ivory, while Jeremiah 38:7 mentions a Cushite servant at the Judean court around this time. The discovery of a few royal name items of Amasis at Sidon and Sumtek III at Beth Shemesh imply continued Egyptian contact with parts of the Levant. Now let's move to the late period. The Persian period. Persia supplants the Babylonian Empire in 539 BC and occupies and governs Egypt as a Persian province or satrapy from 525 to 404 BCE and 343 to 332 BC. And we know that ends with the Greeks, right? The Hellenization period. Egypt retains its independence from 404 BC to 343 BC, despite periodic Persian attacks 374, 373 BC, and 351 BC, and participates in or finances several counterattacks. Before I read on, it's a very interesting story. I can't think of the name of it. Of the Persians knew the religiosity of the Egyptians were so great that they took cats when they warred. They did one of these wars they had with them, and a lot of people say, "Oh, this can't be true," but it's funny if it is true. They understood that they would not hurt a cat because of their religiosity and their religious disposition and how they felt about these animals as cultic deities. That they took a bunch of cats with them when they warred with these Egyptians and threw cats at them. And that's how they subjugated these Egyptians, because they knew they wouldn't fight if there was a bunch of cats out there. I find that funny. And this is why you shouldn't be overtly religious. You can't get to the point where your religion impedes your ability to war. If it impedes your ability to war, then you're going to lose, because the enemy is going to use your religiosity against you. This is also found in the book of Maccabees. When the Greeks got smart, they said, listen, these people observe the Sabbath. These people, they don't do anything on the Sabbath. They are forbidden to do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to attack their camp during the Sabbath. And the people are so religious, so overtly religious, that when their life was in danger, they refused to break the Sabbath and fight back, and they got slaughtered. And then the Maccabees were like, no, we're not going to be those people. You're not going to trample over us and use our religiosity against us. If you come over here on the Sabbath, your ass is grass. You understand? And we sliding every day on y'all. It can be on the Sabbath. We're going to slide on you on the Sabbath. That's how the Maccabees got down. They did not allow their religious disposition and their religiosity to impede their ability to war and protect themselves. You understand? So I find that story rather fascinating. But they were throwing these cats. You know, I can't think of the name of the actual story, but they were throwing cats at these Egyptians, and they thought that the cat was such a cultic deity and a cultic. It was more than just a cat. It was divine, like Sobek. That's why they would mummify crocodiles in early Egyptian times. They would mummify these crocodiles because they thought that was the embodiment of Sobek, the deity Sobek. So these guys were very religious in their thinking. So it's really so funny that you get to these Egyptomaniacs or these comedians now saying, "Oh, well, no, they didn't deal with deities. They didn't deal with no religious thinking." Yes, they did. Yes, this is why they went to these. That's why they made these attempts to mummify these creatures and make these honorific steles of Bobby, the baboon god, and Hapi, and all these different deities, because they were very religious in their thinking, and they had many cultic practices surrounding these deities. All right, so let's get back into the reading. I just had to go into that spiel because that made me think of when I read that about them throwing cats, and that actually worked, and it was a sad day for the Egyptians. Let me read on. It says, Egypt regains its independence from 404 to 343 BC. Read that. In 381 BC, Hyrcanus sends money, grain, and 50 triremes to assist Evagorus of Cyprus against Persia. In 359 BC, Teos enters Palestine with Egyptian and Spartan troops and 200 Athenians triremes, but is disposed en route by Nekhtamnebu II, who aborts the campaign. You know what's interesting about this, and I'm going to continue reading, but it mentions the Spartan troops. And if you read a book of Maccabees, the book of Maccabees talk about the Spartans and the Israelites being related. You understand? Whether the Spartans were Israelites, or they were a Danite, or they were just Shemites, but they said that we have found in our records that we are actually related, and we see these people having incursions and entering Palestine around that period. It says in 346 BC, Nekhtamnebu II dispatches 4,000 mercenaries to Sidon. Despite such proactive Egyptian tactics, however, Persia manages to retake Egypt in 343 BC, holding it until Alexander the Great defeats Persia in 332 BC. Many Egyptian imports and local Phoenician imitations appeared throughout Syria, Palestine, including architecture, e.g. an Egyptian-style shrine at Amrit, anthropoid sarcophagi in Giza, and mostly in Phoenicia, stelae with Egyptian deities and iconography, biblos, pottery imitating stone, alabaster in Palestine, best jars, figurines, amulets, containers of various materials. And we know that I believe the best jars are referring to the Egyptian deity Bes, which they believed when they saw a baby laughing, they thought the god Bes was doing it. So again, these people are very religious, and they literally would believe that these deities were real beings. It says containers of various materials, jewelry, steel impressions, toiletries, mirrors, and coil tubes, utensils, bronze dippers, Egyptian weight units, and some Egyptian coins, 4th century BC. Hybrid Egyptian and other architectural styles appear as far away as the Persian palace at Persepolis, which is Iran. The completion of Necho-Sekes Canal between the Nile and the Red Sea also enabled bulk shipping directly between Egypt and Persia. Hence, despite a visible decline in Egyptian-type items during the preceding Iron Age, the Persian Empire imposed peace and fostered widespread cross-cultural interactions throughout its empire via trade, migrant labor, art, architecture, language, literature, and codifying local laws. And that is the conclusion. We started from the pre-dynastic period, and we ended at the Persian period in Egypt, the relationship between Egypt and the Levant. That's one for the history books, man. That's one for the source. You know how we rock it, man. We go straight to the source here, man. You feel me? You see where I'm coming from? These other channels, these other entities, a lot of it is opinion. A lot of what they're dealing with is what they opine. But here at the source, we try to live by a code, and that code is show me the source material. Source up or shut up. You understand? And that's holding yourself to a scholastic standard, which is missing from the conscious community. It's a lot of theatrics, antics, a lot of sensationalism, but not a lot of studying, not a lot of research methodology, rigorous research methodology. And that's what I try to provide and bring to what we call YouTube, which is social media. All All right, let me get to these comments, man, and deal with you guys' comments. Shabbat shalom to my brother Joshua. I hope what I brought out today was very insightful. You took notes, and you learned something today. You know what I'm saying? Plumantis, you know, bro, all the love in the world goes to you, man. You support us from day one. You still here. You know what I'm saying? We gonna never forget you. You wasn't with me when I was shooting in the gym. Hey, all my brothers and all my sisters that was with me when I was shooting in the gym, man, I'm always give y'all respect and love. You feel me? Hit that like button, subscribe. We at 9,000 subscribers, man. 9,000, 9K. We not supposed to be here. Hey, what's that R&B song? How did you get here? You're not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be hated and not viewed. Remember? Source gang, 7 gang over everything. Let's go. Like my brother Plumenta said, hit that like button, subscribe, and share. Support. Get this information out there to the 4 corners. You hear me? D-Red, man, what it do, brother? What it do? The blue collar scholar. Let's get it. Devin, Shabbat Shalom, brother. Louis V. Baby says human trafficking. Yeah, a lot of human trafficking was going on between Egypt and Levant. A lot of y'all brothers be fronting on Egypt. Oh, Egypt wasn't doing that. Y'all try to make Egypt to be this, what's the word I'm looking for? Harmonious utopia where they did nothing. They didn't war with nobody. Like, y'all gotta stop that, man. They didn't enslave nobody. Y'all gotta stop that. We have a long history of enslavement. Listen, we were enslaving the pygmies when we went into Egypt, when we went to Africa and dominated the continent of Africa. It is what it is. It's just history. Like, stop trying to paint this utopian, over righteous image of Egypt. Like, that's not reflected in the archaeological record or the study of anthropology, man. Aryeh Nasi says Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, brother. Shalom, man. I hope that you got something from this lesson. I hope you got something from these readings that I'm bringing out, the literature, and you can add to your arsenal and you know, add to your repertoire. Aryeh Nasi also says Jerusalem was documented as well as other ancient cities mentioned in the Bible by the ancient Egyptians. That's huge. Exactly. When you go to the story of Sinuhe, these lands, Shechem, Byblos, all these lands that are being written of in the Bible have been cited during these periods and during these times in Egypt. You understand? The extrication text, it cites these same places and gives the same names. It gives the name, the prince of Edom. You understand? Jobab or Job. You understand? It gives that name of him ruling that land. It gives Abrahani, Abraham ruling Shechem. It gives these names. You understand? So we can make strong, powerful arguments. Let me keep reading. Yeah, key info. Yeah, very key info. You know what I'm saying? I try to. I don't really hit y'all with quantity, man. I try to give y'all quality, man, over here. You know what I'm saying? This that uncut, not stepped on. You hear me? My product ain't stepped on. D Tree for Yah says, hallelujah, happy Sabbath, shalom. Yeah, shalom, brother. Happy Sabbath, man. May the Most High bless you and yours. Nate Badyal says they're too busy trying to find fault in the Israelites. Yeah, that's why they're not really bringing the history between Egypt and Levant. You got Egyptians going into the Levant. You got Levantine populations going into Egypt, all the way stretching all the way back to the pre-dynastic periods, Nakata periods, which, you know, in theory can stretch back 5,000 BCE. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. That's how long we've been intermingling and interacting with each other. And that goes for the Israelite side too. Like, why are you down in Egypt? You probably down in your ancestors by proxy and don't even know it. Ramses III is E1B1A. Majority of African Americans is E1B1A. Let's talk about it. We read in the literature You hear me? We read in the literature that many of these African human remains is found in the Levant during the Nakata period. So our stamp is in history, man. You know what I'm saying? You can argue your opinion, you can't argue facts. Let's get it. True Jew Ministry says, Shalom, shalom, brother. Peace to you and your household. May the Most High bless you and yours, man. Louis V. Baby said, I love when history lines up with the scriptures. Exactly. Like I said, many of these scriptures is encapsulating historical realities. It's just that simple. Louis V. Baby says, irrefutable. My brother Indio Negro da Terra says, what book is this? This book, let me put it on the screen for you. Let me go to the cover page. And I might put it in the back if you're still there. This book is the Oxford Handbook of Archaeology of the Levant, circa 8000 to 332 BCE. Very good book. Good purchase. It's a little pricey, man. So if you're not ready, if you don't want to spend over $100 for a book, I don't advise it. But you know, I'm an avid reader. I love to study. So it's nothing to me to purchase something that I truly enjoy. Let me share my screen. For some reason, I can't show you the cover. I can't show you the actual image. None of the images are popping up today. But this is the book right here. The Oxford Handbook of Archaeology of the Levant. Edited by Margaret Steiner and Kilibru. And I purchased this book on Google Play Books, and that's where I purchased it. I purchased most of my books on Google Play Books. I use Kindle as well. I use what's the other one? Nook. Nook is Barnes and Noble's app. You understand? What I don't like about Nook is the web browser. They use a web browser interface, and their interface is not, the UI is not that friendly, user friendly, and it doesn't look as appealing. You know what I'm saying? So the books I have on Nook, I'm going to have to go live on my computer and also add myself on my phone so you guys can have a pleasant read. You know, it looks better on my phone than my computer. But in short, that's the book, the Oxford Handbook of the Archaeology of the Levant. That's the book. And I'm also going to purchase the Oxford Handbook on the archaeology of, I think, Southern Egypt. That's going to be my next big purchase. I've been eyeing that book. And when I look at books like that, and I don't care if it's 150, whatever, if the material is worth gold, I'm going to get the book. Like, best believe. Like, you go run and buy the new Jordans, I go buy the best books. Priorities. Indio Negro da Terra says his voice is like Dr. Clyde Winter's voice. I sound like Dr. Clyde Winters. Let me go listen to Dr. Clyde Winters. I read a lot of his material, man. I ain't never heard him speak, so that's interesting. Bellet says, sup, what's going on? Ramal Yahoo says, I read the TS 2009 Hallelujah Scriptures, RSB, or the Sefer. Yeah. So my favorite version is G&T. Maybe I'm biased, but I just like how the English read. It reads so much better than the King James Version. Try reading, for example, read Numbers 1 in the KJV and then read it in the G&T. The difference is so like I said, I don't know how else to put it. It's more legible. That's the best way I can put it. It's more legible. It's better. You know what I'm saying? You get to read numbers and how they list the names out, and then these old words are not even in use anymore in here. Like, no. This King James Version is antiquated. I don't read the King James Version, man. I'll go to the ISV, International Standard, the New Living Translation. And you know what's funny about the New Living Translation? And the ISV and stuff like that, they actually, where it says David was red and ruddy, it says he was dark. And a lot of y'all be poo-pooing on these translations, like, nah, I don't believe it. You following the white man, I heard King James version, but they actually says, okay, no, when it says Adami, Adami can be translated as dark because Adami can mean earth tone, can mean an earthly tone. So those versions say that King David was black. Why you hating on it? But I like those versions, for the most part, because they read better. They're more legible. They don't use these old, antiquated terms. Black Gray say, not your enemy. Shaking my head. War is irrational. I don't get what you're saying, Black Gray. Maybe you can clarify that statement. Black Gray said it was a sad day for the cats. Are you referencing that? Yeah, the religiosity of these Egyptians was so great, man. The Persians was throwing cats at them, according to that story, and they would not fight back because of the cats. You know what I'm saying? And their religious view of these cats. They thought of these cats as actual deities or representations of a deity. Ramal Yahoo says, I think the movie 300 was about the Jews. Possibly. It's very possible. It's in the realm of possibility that is the case. Like I said, in the book of Maccabees, it says they were brothers. They said the people of the Lacedaemon, which is our Spartans, were brothers with the Jews. They were brothers. They said they found it in their records. Bellet says, good job. I try to bring quality. Sometimes I can't give you quantity. I work a lot, but I can give you quality. Need quality information. Royal Prince says, peace, bully. Israel, hit that like, fam. Exactly, man. Hit that like button. Show some love, man. Like is free 99. Hitting the like button is free 99. You mean to tell me you can't, push that like button for a brother? Hit that notification bell too, so you can know when we go live. So, peace, Royal Prince, shalom, brother. May the Most High bless you and yours. Mighty Lion Yah, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. I'm glad you came through, studied with us today, learned something with us today. You know what I'm saying? Let's get it. Royal Prince says, powerful. Yeah, man. We try to bring that quality to us. Matthew Dean, Shabbat Shalom, Miss Parker. Love this, our history. Yeah. We're gonna keep doing it. Shalom, Matthew. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. May the Most High bless you and yours. Wait, is this Elder Rusty? Oh, shalom, brother. This is Elder Rusty, my fellow Dallas brother. I think this is who this is. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Dallas, man. Shout out to the brothers and sisters in Dallas. You know how we rock it, man. Nate Bod, y'all said the Oxford Handbook of the Minor Prophets might be good to check out. Yeah, I haven't seen that. Maybe I should look into it. I'll figure out, if it's a good purchase or not. You know what I'm saying? If I'm interested in what it's talking about, the Minor Prophets. If it's bringing some great archaeology or some great attestations, I will. But if it's just going over the scripture, then I'm like, maybe. Matthew says, I read the inspired scripture research Bible. Much love. Yeah, man. Yeah. Like, we got to open up our palette, so to speak, when we read these different versions. Like I said, don't be stuck in that paradigm that you don't ever think for 1 minute that you got to read the King James version. Ramal Yahoo says the reason I think 300 was about the Jews is because I read the same story in the Apocrypha. And they had Darius and Xerxes in there. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying it lines up with a biblical narrative. Yeah, but you understand, Xerxes, they were all over. The Persian Empire was huge. You understand? They were over there. They were dealing with the Aegean Sea and these colonies, these ancient Greece. Well, they weren't Greek colonies at the time. I forget the name of them. The names escape me, but they were dealing with those lower areas of the Mediterranean, the islands of the Mediterranean, and warring with those people over there. You know what I'm saying? I wonder, can I find a Persian reference where they were throwing cats? You see Persian Cats. Let me just Google it real quick. At ancient Egyptians. What's that story called, man? Yeah, right here. The Battle of Pelusium. A victory decided by cats. Yeah, War of Cats. Egyptians lost war because they love cats. Here we go. Let me share my screen real quick. Show y'all this real quick before we bounce out of here. Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna listen to Clyde Winter. I never heard his voice when somebody said I sound like Clyde Winters. I read many of his works, never heard him. Yeah, so this is Ripley's.com. I guess Ripley's, believe it or not. It says war cats. Egyptians lost the war because they love cats. Cats have been used many times in war. The Egyptians lost a battle to a cat-wielding army. Battle cats, cats in warfare. Can you ever love cats too much? We all know the Egyptians revered cats. Some even worshiped them as gods. But what's the possibility their evanescent love for the feline have cost them a war? Let me see if I can blow this up so y'all can see this. Picture it. It's the 2nd century. War has been brewing between Egypt and Persia, and sometime you're an Egyptian soldier trained to be a deadly dervish of spear and sword. You're stationed atop the high city wall, ready to defend your king and country from the invading Persians, when in the distance you see something. A horde of Persian soldiers brandishing swords and cats. And then they have an artistic depiction right there. Battle cries, sword clashes, and meowing. They were using cats because they knew that these people would not attack if there was kittens everywhere. Just think about that. I mean, it's smart. Like from the Persian perspective, that's like a smart move. Like, look, we ain't gonna waste no time with them. We're gonna bring all these goddamn street cats with us and throw these alley cats at them, and they will not. They're gonna surrender. So, according to the Macedonian author of the Stratagems of War, Polyaenus, the invading Persians cunningly used cats to protect themselves from Egyptian arrow fire. The Persian king Cambyses II persuaded troops to carry these mystical animals into battle to prevent Egyptian forces from fighting back. He guessed the cats would give the Egyptian pause, refusing to attack for fear of hitting the cuddly creatures. This tactic allowed Persian forces to successfully storm the city and win the battle. This method must have been effective, as battle historian Herodotus noted that 50,000 Egyptians fell in battle, while only 7,000 Persians lost their lives. Cambyses would kick off the Persian period of pharaohs in Egypt that would last nearly 200 years. It says this idea will make anyone pause. Persians aren't the only army to use cats in war. Germany researched ways of using cats and even birds to spread poisonous gas in the 16th century. The idea was attached to the glass jars made into gas bombs to the animals, and then send them into the enemy fortresses. Cats often just ran back at Allied camps. Oops. So that's funny. The cat would come back to the German camp and accidentally kill them. During battle for Britain, many families used cats as early warning systems for German bombers. When kittens sensed planes coming, they would run for cover, and British civilians would do the same. Oh, that's cool. Today, artist Jeff DeBoer celebrates the war potential of cats by making armor for his feline friends. This cat armor is made custom and by hand. This is one on display in Myrtle Beach Auditorium. What do you think? Could our affection for these lovable litters be dangerous? Comment below and let us know. But it's just funny that if this historical event actually happened, it's smart for one, but it's also a lesson. Like, never let your religiosity impede your ability to defend yourself, impede your ability to war. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they meow. You know what I'm saying? A bunch of meowing, and you know, the picture of the army coming in, and you know they got these swords, and they giving their war cries, battle cries, and then you hear meows in the background. Like, what the hell? Everybody else said using the Bible on us. Yeah, I mean, if they know that your religions, you wouldn't do certain things to defend yourself, they're going to use that against you. He said that bird had fire coming. Oh, you talking about the article? I guess so. All right, man. I'm gonna end it, man. I'm gonna end it. You know what I'm saying? Good information. I'm glad you guys came through and dealt with the source terrorists, the scholastic bully. You know how we get down, man. 7 gang. 7 candlesticks up. I've been telling y'all, it ain't a debate. It's a stick up. How we gonna end this, man? We gonna end it. How we gonna end our the line? Maybe I should just hit y'all with a surprise. You know what I'm saying? One of my joints. And it was one of my joints. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I've been showing my brother a lot of love. You know what I'm saying? My brother LV Europa a lot of love. Maybe I should hit one of my joints. See what y'all think about it. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's go.
Yeah, crown me king. Tell them penis, crown me king. Tell Trump, crown me king. Crown me king, crown me king. Black and Latin kings. 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 Praise the Elohim. Praise we shall be redeemed. Yes, sir. This the righteous thing. A young simple king. What else? Royalty in my identity. Right. Set apart ethnically. Right. Kings in my pedigree. Increasing our regency. I don't follow Yahweh. I follow Yahweh. Native Indian tongue. Right. Yo, hey, Wahweh. Oh, so suave. We so suave. Young, black, and noble. Kings of Constantinople. To my ancestors, I'm ever showing love. Shout out King James. He came up the dub. Knowledge is wealth. No fast for. Venerating the image of King Casper. Noble class of the black diaspora. A crown of feathers. Just mean our kings fly. Cuckoo come, Quetzalcoatl, all my kings fly. Black like Montezuma, proud of Musa Musa. I speak of the past to manifest the future. Our future limitless. Black and Latin kings, like Septimius, like Septimius. Black and Latin kings,
like Septimius. Work. Hold on, I just saw another joint, and we're gonna do a double feature, man. I'm sorry, I gotta play this. I'm sorry, your mind, but this song goes so hard. I gotta leave with this one.
Taurus 45 on my side. This looks like I'm falling. See the twinkle in my eye. Doesn't get you stalling. Out you living suicide. Out you living do or die. Getting high. Bitch, I'm too fly. Raise the roof up to the sky. Got it proof I never lie. Tell the truth, I never die. To the sky, bitch, I'm too fly. Big shout out to I. don't listen to the man up in the sky, but you listen to the man up in the skies. Why you know you just choose which way to fly? Rock the boat, shake his feet from side to side. Make them feel just for their lives, just like you feel just for your lives. I see that look up in your eyes. You might step, but it's on black lies. Wish you niggas realize that ain't gangsta, you won't touch the one that's stank. All in all, the bitch, you might just tell them thank you. Right before we blink. Your dog named mama side. Cause these niggas scared to die. Your dog named mama side. Cause you niggas scared to die. Tears falling down my eyes. Never kiss me slowly. Taurus 45 on my side. This looks like a falling. You can see the twinkle in my eye. Pussy bitch is stalling. Out your leg for suicide. Big shout out to I and I.
All right, that's it. Let's get it. Source gang, 7 gang over everything, man. Know that I'm clipped up. You know that I'm gripped up. And this 7 candle sticks up. And I've been telling you niggas, it ain't a debate. It's a stick up. Gang!